Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling one of history's great puzzles. How did a small, faraway island nation manage to conquer the vast, rich, and powerful Indian subcontinent? It's really an incredible story of ambition, division, and strategy that literally changed the course of world history.
So, let's just dive right in. This is the central question, the one that stumped people for ages. How on earth did a nation, which was about 20 times smaller, establish its rule over a subcontinent that was packed with powerful kingdoms and ancient civilizations? When you look at it like that, it sounds completely impossible, right?
So to figure this out, we're going to approach it like a historical detective story. We're going to uncover 3 key clues that, once we piece them all together, will show us exactly how this seemingly impossible conquest actually happened. Okay, so our first clue, and honestly, this might be the most important one, isn't found in Britain. Nope, it's found within India itself, back in the 18th century. You see, the subcontinent was not one unified country at all.
Just look at the major players on the board at the time. You had absolute powerhouses like the Marathas, the Kingdom of Mysore, and the Sikh Empire in Punjab. These were huge, formidable forces. Any one of them could have given the British a serious run for their money. But, and this is the crucial part, they were almost always too busy fighting each other for power to see the much bigger threat that was growing on their doorstep.
And here's why that was so important. The very idea of a single Indian nation just didn't really exist yet. People's loyalty wasn't to India, it was to their local king, their region, their community. So think about it. If you were a soldier from Awadh, and the British offered you good, steady pay to fight against the Marathas, you weren't betraying your country. You were just a professional soldier doing a job for your employer against a rival kingdom.
All right, on to our second clue. This one is all about how the British often expanded their empire not with cannons and armies, but with contracts and policies. They were absolute masters of conquest through cunning diplomacy.
You see, the East India Company almost never just launched a direct all-out attack. Instead, they had this whole toolkit of clever and pretty ruthless policies to weaken Indian states from the inside. The ring-fence policy was all about creating buffer states. The policy of paramountcy was basically just them declaring, by the way, we're the supreme power here. The subsidiary alliance was a real trap. Rulers had to pay for British troops in their own kingdom, which meant they slowly lost all their independence. And that last one, the doctrine of lapse, well, we need to take a closer look at that.
So, let's zoom in on the doctrine of lapse, because it is one of the most brilliant and controversial tools they had. This one rule was an incredibly effective way for them to just swallow up major states without firing a single shot.
The rule itself was pretty simple, almost deceptively so. Here's how it worked. If an Indian ruler who was under British protection died without a direct biological male heir to take over,
Then his kingdom was considered to have lapsed, and just like that, it was annexed and became British territory. It's a perfect example of how they could gain huge amounts of land and wealth, not through war, but just by enforcing a convenient rule that they themselves had made up.
And that brings us to our final clue. This is all about the tangible, and let's be honest, pretty unfair advantages the British had when it came to their military, their leadership, and their money.
This table really tells you everything you need to know. The company's army was a professional fighting force with modern muskets and cannons. But look at that first row, because it might be the most important part. They paid their soldiers regularly. That guaranteed loyalty. On the other side, many Indian rulers paid their armies irregularly and often relied on mercenaries who might just switch sides if the price was right.
Leadership was another huge difference. The British had brilliant and ruthless commanders like Robert Clive and Warren Hastings. But they also had a whole system of capable officers supporting them. It was a cohesive unit. Now, there were amazing Indian leaders like Hyder Ali and the legendary Tipu Sultan, but they were often isolated. They weren't just fighting the British, they were also fighting other Indian states and sometimes even dealing with traitors in their own camp.
And finally, it all comes down to money. As soon as the British got control of Bengal, which was one of the richest regions in the entire world, the game changed. They suddenly had this massive, steady stream of cash. That financial firepower, backed by the government back in Britain, meant they could afford to pay their professional army and fight long, expensive wars that most individual Indian states just couldn't sustain.
So, we've laid out all the clues. We've examined the evidence. What's the final verdict here? How did this impossible conquest actually happen?
It really wasn't one single thing. It was a perfect storm. It was this powerful combination of Indian disunity, incredibly shrewd British diplomacy, a superior military,
overwhelming financial strength, and cohesive leadership all coming together at exactly the right or wrong moment in history.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. What if just one of those ingredients was missing from the recipe? What if the major Indian powers had managed to unite against the common enemy? What if the British had never gotten their hands on the wealth of Bengal? Take away any one of those factors, and the entire history of the subcontinent and of the world might look completely different today.